let these people know that are on the job sites how you want that job to be taken care of. And then we also have rules, okay? Again, we're the contractor, we're in charge. And it gives you a real good basis to go back to the contractor and say, hey, why were you guys smoking in the house? There's no smoking allowed at any time. I don't care if you're an electrician and you're roughing the house in. There's just no smoking. So you want to be able to communicate that and make sure that they understand that. My superintendents, they're pretty neat guys, like neat as in tidy. Had one of my superintendents, because one of the rules here is clean up after yourself, sweep up, sawdust, and all that sort of stuff. Went into the house after the plumber was in there, and for whatever reason, plumbers don't feel like they need to clean up as good as everybody else does. But I see some smiley faces. But he actually took a box, swept the house up, and brought it to the next job and put it in the front of his truck and said, I'll do it once, but not twice. So that was a pretty good way to kind of control the job. So again, you're the general, you're the person in charge. So contractor accountability, work as a team and communicate. I had somebody come up to me at the break and say, when you award the loser, or when you let the losing bidder know first that they didn't get the job, and then you call the contractor you want to do the job, have you ever had the guy that you want to do the job say, I can't, and then you have to go back to the guy you called and said, you don't get the job? And if you have good communication and good relationships with the people that you're working with, usually it'll work out for you. On occasion, though, it can be a little salty. Replace a trade that's not performing. Document the issues. Safety is a huge thing. Again, we want to incorporate that here. If you've got a contractor that's constantly violating the safety policies that you have, but how about OSHA? That's the person you've got to look out for, because you as the general contractor, through a multi-employer citation, can be cited if one of your contractors is not performing safely on the job. And that happened to me. So I'm speaking from experience. But one of the things that saved us was we had clear documentation. Okay, we had paperwork, we had signatures from our roofing contractor that he was going to follow the standards that OSHA has put in place. And when we were able to go in there and show them all of this, that we had it documented, that the contractor knew how they were supposed to perform, we got our fines reduced. So, but you want to have documentation if there are issues. And it makes it a lot easier than to just say, well, we just don't want to deal with this anymore, and you can move on. But you also want to give them the opportunity to resolve any issues that you have. Our roofing contractor, for instance, really took safety serious after that. Perhaps it was the $10,000 bill that he got from the federal government, but I'm just thinking maybe that had something to do with it. But we still work together. So, and then you want to have internal discussions about replacements within your own companies. Okay, who's going to replace the contractor before you get rid of the contractor? Let's get some guys on board that are going to be able to perform. Not that you get rid of somebody and then you're scrambling, looking. Okay, let's get digging. We're going to talk about the production phase. And again, there's a lot of experience in the room here. Yeah, in back.
Go back to the safety issue. Does OSHA oversee just the union jobs, or is it any job?
No. The question was, does OSHA oversee only union contractors or non-union? OSHA oversees everyone.
They can show up at any given moment.
If your grandmother works at the coffee shop down at the end of the road, OSHA's involved. Okay? So it's anywhere and everywhere. They don't discriminate, in other words. So, okay. Any other questions before we move on? The role of the construction manager, excavation to closing, this is going to vary from company to company. Okay, I have worked for companies that have had guys, superintendents that take it from excavation to rough inspection. And then they've got finish superintendents, okay? So, they specialize in that phase of construction. Then, obviously you've got people that take it from start to finish. There's also companies out there where their superintendents have nothing to do with warranty work. They've got a whole warranty department, okay? So it's going to vary from company to company. But the role of the construction manager, excavation to closing, excavate the foundation, oversee the framing, the rough mechanicals, framing, installation, and pre-drywall walkthrough, and the inspection for that. Drywall, hang, tape, spray, install trim materials, get a certificate of occupancy. If you're doing turnkey and you've got landscape, they're going to oversee that installation. And then the final customer walkthrough and product orientation, that might even vary from company to company. You might have people that just strictly do closings. Quality control management. I'm looking for, turn my page too quick here.
Hey, Joe, can I ask you a question? Subsoil conditions.
Yeah.
Where does that kind of fall into your process? I guess I was going to say, I was surprised I didn't see it in the pre-dig conversation, or was that something that maybe just wasn't discussed?
Yeah, good question. The question was subsoil conditions and where does that fall into the process, and he was surprised it wasn't in the pre-dig process. That's a good discussion. We do have that discussion with our customers at pre-dig. That's the neat thing about having all your selections done up front. That customer, before we dig the hole, knows what that house is going to cost. I mean, if they don't change anything, okay, through change orders and everything like that. And I always tell them there's two variables that I have no control over, and that's what's under the ground and how deep your well is going to be. And ironically enough, I've got one going right now. They're going to have about $20,000 in subsoil repairs. So, but that's a good thing. And it should be addressed in your contract, clearly addressed in your contract, whose responsibility that is. Another question?
Which point on, Joe, if you use the MBA contract, it's all covered in there?
Yeah, if you're using the MBA contract, it's laid out in there beautifully. How many people are using the MBA, standard MBA contract? Yeah, it's a great document.
One other thing you may not have control over is how long it takes to build a home.
Okay, the point was one other thing you might not have control over is how long it takes to build a home. I would say yes and no. The exception being the weather we're having this week. I have no control over that. And that's why in your contract it specifically says working days. So you've kind of got yourself covered there. But whatever is in your contract, you're obligated to that. So good points. You want to manage the quality control management. You're managing the schedule. You're implementing cost control measures. And again, that's a critical aspect of the production side of this equation. And a lot of companies think that the guy that's out on the job supervising has no cost control measures that he can implement. And that's the farthest thing from the truth. That your superintendent out in the field, if he is not sharp, if he doesn't catch things that shouldn't be going in, maybe you've got a bunk of studs that are just nasty, you've got to make sure that he knows he has the authority and that he's qualified to take the steps to correct all that, because all it's going to do is cost you time and money down the road. Supervise each house through completion of construction, inspections, and walkthroughs. Again, that's going to vary from company to company. And then the warranty. We're going to spend a pretty good chunk of time on the warranty as we take you through this. Quality control management. Quality is everyone's responsibility, okay? That is flat out every single person's responsibility. Quality, you need to have people that are committed to quality, okay? And quality doesn't necessarily just mean quality of work, okay? How do you want your company represented? And your company is represented through the contractors that you use, okay? And again, keep in mind when those contractors are on that job site, a lot of times you're not there. Most of the time you're not there. So you really have to have the trust in them that they're going to represent your company well, no matter what it says on the side of their truck. Quality policies and procedures. Again, you just want to set the bar, what you're going to accept as quality. Again, if you're using the standard MBA contract, the standard MBA contract will reference the quality industry standards. Okay? So if any of you have that book, it's something to take a look at. And again, that's just the benchmark where things start. I would hope everybody is building higher quality than that. That's a benchmark. Selection and installation of materials. Again, go back to that example of the bunk of studs. Okay, sometimes the buyer at the lumberyard has a bad day, and he took a boxcar of studs he shouldn't have taken, and now it's on your job, and now it's your problem. Make sure that the selection and installation of that material is being monitored. And that's communicating to your subcontractors as well. Because if you don't have, if your carpenter contractor, let's use him for example, if you don't have the faith in them that they're going to inspect the lumber that you're purchasing and they're not going to cull out the bad stuff, well then you might have to look for another contractor. So selection and installation of materials critical to the quality control of the job. Safety of the personnel and the work conditions. Well, we just talked about that. There's a direct correlation between how safe someone is and the quality of their work. There's no question about that. So you want to make sure that their safety is up to snuff and that their work conditions are staying where you want them to be. Consistent applications. You're being consistent in how you are looking at quality and how you're appraising quality. Okay? You can't have one standard over here for this guy and another standard over here. You've got to be consistent across the board. And then quality improvements. In our company, it's never good enough. Okay? We constantly have to be improving. And that's really a mindset. And it's never good enough. And then program continuation. Make sure that if you put a program in place, that you continue to monitor that and utilize that. One of the things that's most frustrating is when you keep changing policies and your subcontractors don't know what direction you're going in. And a lot of times that happens with bigger companies. Somebody's always trying to devise a better mousetrap, and it just seems like let's just change something to seem like we're moving forward. So you want to have program continuation. Once you start something, be consistent. Modify it, improve it, but don't continually change the way you're monitoring the quality and how you're implementing quality. Quality control management. The customer will be the main gauge of quality. Okay? Some customers' concept of quality it varies widely. Okay? But ultimately, the customer that you're building the house for is going to have the final say-so. Set the correct expectations with the trades and the customers from the beginning. Again, we want to know what the expectations are. And we set those expectations here for the customer and for the trade. And it's set from the beginning. So make sure you're establishing that. You want to exceed the Uniform Dwelling Code and the industry standards. I just touched on that. It's just a standard, okay? It doesn't say everybody has to build to that, but you want to exceed it. Trade partners are a great reference and guide, okay? Keep in mind, those trades are on a lot of different jobs, just not your jobs. So pick their brain. If there's something you're having trouble with, go to the resource. And your trade partners are a great resource for continually improving what your process is. Product installation requirements. That's a real key because there's so many products out there right now. The internet, I don't know how many times we get customers that, I was up clicking on websites last night and I found this gadget I want put in my house. Well, you better know that product, okay? And we've been putting some wild stuff in people's houses. But not only that, but the installation requirements for things that go unseen. I have an interesting story. We had a plumbing contractor that changed his pipe, and he started fireplaces and gas out to the patio. He was using that flexible pipe. He'd come off the black pipe and then use the flex pipe. Well, not only was it caught by the building inspector, because the product specifications actually are what the building inspector looks at, because not every product, matter of fact, there's no products referenced in the uniform code. They just say manufacturer's specifications. Well, we ran some of this flexible pipe, and he didn't have the right bracket in the corner. And everything looked perfect. I mean, a very neat, very tidy job. And the building inspector, I just happened to be on the job that day with my superintendent, and the building inspector said, well, I got to fail you. And we said, well, we did, the 3 items you wanted taken care of, everything's done. And he says, well, no, I noticed this pipe down in the basement, it's not correct, and you're missing some bracket. And I said, that's perfect. We had the plate over it so the drywaller couldn't screw through it. Well, he says, come with me. And we went upstairs out of the basement, went in the back of this guy's truck. I love telling this story for some of you that have heard it before. Sorry, but he opens up the back of his Bronco. In the back of his Bronco, he had a dozen milk crates with manufacturers' manuals, just of whatever it was. And he went to the gas pipe section, he pulled it out, and he says, here's the product, here's the bracket you need. And by code, he's correct. So again, that product installation requirements, if that just happened to be an extreme, but if you're unfamiliar with the product, you want to make sure you've got all that information so that it doesn't reflect negatively on the quality of the project. Do not accept sloppy work. I mean, if it's bad, just take it apart, redo it. If your carpenter contractor, if your framing contractor put a wall on the wrong side of the line and it's 3.5 inches off and you're in finished carpentry now, just take the wall down and redo it, okay? If it's out of plumb, whatever it is, don't accept sloppy work. Focus on 2 phases of quality inspection. The building envelope, framing, siding, rough mechanicals, etc. And then you've got the cosmetic fit and finish of the millwork, tile, cabinetry, and things like that, okay? And it's real important that you understand the differences in the quality there and what you're really trying to prevent. You've got the building envelope. You want to make sure you're not getting water intrusion, things like that. You want to be sure that the products you're using there are put together in a quality fashion. And then obviously fit and finish. That's where the craftsman comes in. And if he's got to adjust things from there to make sure the fit and finish is right, make sure that they're doing that. Use a lot walk, a pre-drywall orientation, etc. to set the quality expectations with the customers. If you have models that you're selling from, and that's the representation that you've made to the customer in terms of the quality of the work, make sure that's the level that they're getting, okay? Don't put your best contractors on the model and then get the cheap contractors to get you to make the most money after the contract's signed, okay? Be consistent with who's doing your work and make sure that that expectation the customer has by looking at your model is really representative of what they're getting in the home. Use daily interaction with the trades to set expectations. If you have multiple jobs going, typically your superintendent's going to be talking to the electrician, whether it's about that job or the 5 other jobs that you got coming up. So interact with those trades on a daily basis if needed. And it's really difficult. I know everybody, we're in the electronic age. It's tough to email quality. You can't get the expectations through an email in terms of quality. Quality is really something that people have a passion for. And it's hard to express that to tradespeople through email. So however you communicate with your contractors, make sure that that's the way they want to be communicated with, okay? If it's a carpet guy and you just email me the dates you want me to be there, fine. But, you know, if it's a finished carpenter, chances are the guy probably doesn't email from work or have a PDA on him, but he probably would appreciate a phone call. So, excuse me, however you're going to communicate with those contractors, make sure that's an agreeable way of communication. Quality inspections, the building envelope, the exterior covering and structural member of the home. Some examples are the foundations, footing, framing, trusses, exterior cladding like shingles, siding, and windows. That's a critical part of the building process. It's becoming more and more a practice, whether it's Typar, Tyvek, but some sort of building wrap on that house. And how that building wrap is treated throughout the process after the carpenter leaves the job and hopefully has all the seams vertically and horizontally taped and everything's nice and tucked away. Once they leave that job, how is that house getting treated? How is it getting beat up? Who's putting holes in the house to run pipes or electrical outlets or whatever? You want to make sure you're staying on top of that, because if the carpenter contractor is conscientious and does a really good job at that, you want to make sure the people following him are as conscientious when they're doing their work. I always say, if you make a hole, you own it. So that's your hole, you've created it, now we got to make sure that it's sealed up properly after you run your conduit through it. Inspected after each component is installed. Prepare for the drywall. And again, depending on when you meet with your customers on the job site, that's going to be dictated by your policies and procedures. But your superintendent should really be looking at this every day and, you know, look at the end product you're getting. Okay, so if it's the electrician, it's hard to really gauge the quality when they got wires all over, but I mean, at the end of the job, make sure you're taking each section of that job, whether it's plumbing, electrical, rough carpentry, and just look at it and make sure that the end product that you've paid for and you've agreed on meet your quality standards. Once something's covered up, it's far more time consuming and costly to fix it. And we've all covered something up that probably shouldn't have been, and it comes back and costs you time and money. And a checklist is a good way just to make sure that these things aren't getting overlooked. Depending on the experience of the superintendent, a checklist for less experienced superintendents is going to be far more helpful. After you've done this a while, your eye is somewhat drawn to the things that you know are going to be a problem down the road. So if you need to, put a checklist together. And if you do use checklists and that's your policy, then use a checklist for every job. Okay? And that works both ways too for your superintendent. I have worked for builders where they've given me a checklist. And as a carpenter contractor, we go through and check off to make sure all the bearing points are blocked. I mean, just, you know, so if you're going to have your trade contractors use checklists, be consistent with that as well. And come up with a checklist that every time they turn their invoice in, they're going to give you a checklist. Pre-drywall inspection should take 3 to 5 hours to complete. That's a standard house. If you've got a big, giant custom home, it could take more. It's done around the time the home is ready to be inspected with the local building inspector. So essentially what you have is all the rough mechanicals are done, and you are ready to proceed with insulation. Whether you go through that house and sight down all the walls, take an 8-foot level, make sure the studs are straight, make sure that, you know, any of the things that potentially could be a problem for you down the road, you want to make sure you go through that house, get it cleaned out, get it swept out. A neat job site typically is going to be a more high quality job site just because you're not dealing with a lot of clutter. And then if you do a pre-drywall orientation with the homeowner, that would be the time for that. The purpose is to set the expectations with the homeowner, because typically by the time you get to drywall, at least at our company, we can then establish a closing date for that customer because we're not as affected by weather and things like that. If you'd like, you could review the selected options before drywall. Sometimes you're opening yourself up to, oh, I didn't think of that. Well, let's change this, and you may have more problems than you'd like. And then explain the building process to the customer. A lot of times people are curious, and today with all the building shows that are on TV, sometimes you run into it where everybody's the expert. I watched Home and Garden Television last night, and a lot of times you got to just reel them back and show them what reality is, and that's the way it is. Sometimes you're going to have dirt on that board, and we're going to drywall over it, and things like that. So you just want to explain the process again, and it's always a good time when you've got that contact with the customer. You're just reselling the fact that they made the right decision to build with you. Just a chance for you to resell them. This again is a pre-drywall inspection sheet. That is a vision test. Pre-drywall orientation sheet. And again, as you're going through this with the customer, you just, make sure that you're explaining things and you're consistent. Quality inspections for the cosmetic fit and finish. Fit and finish of the home, example would be drywall, paint, cabinets, flooring, and millwork. Okay? It's a direct reflection of the quality of the cosmetic items. Obviously, they're not structural. They're there to look pretty, and it's the superintendent's role to make sure that happens. Focus on customers' hot buttons. If you've got somebody that in selections spent a huge amount of time on their kitchen, making sure that they've got all the trays and all the pullouts and all the little flutes and decorative pieces that they want on their cabinets, you know that once those cabinets get installed, they are going to just be pouring over them. So make sure you give your contractors a heads up on that. And, there are some things you can do to control that process as well. So knowing those hot button issues not only is going to hopefully keep the customer happy, but it's going to make your life a little bit easier as well. Important to walk the house every day after the paint stage. Now, that's really dependent on how many jobs you have going. But typically at this stage, you want to make sure you're staying on top of it, because this is where the little small items are going to start to pile up into a big punch list at the end of the job, and you're going to miss closing dates and things like that because they got to redo things. You just want to make sure you're staying on top of it. It's not every day, it's every other day, but this is a real critical point in monitoring the quality. And again, it really boils down to the relationship you have with your subcontractors as well. Again, your subcontractors are not the superintendent. Calling the painting contractor and asking him if a cabinet was dropped off is one thing, but calling the painting contractor to ask him to go look if a pipe is dripping in the basement is another thing. So you want to make sure that if you are going to rely on your contractors, be realistic and reasonable with what you're asking them to do. Quality is ultimately the superintendent or the builder's responsibility. Pre-homeowner orientation punch list. After the house is complete and clean, you want to do an orientation. Now, typically we do our orientation the day that they close, okay? And this is a critical time period because there's a lot of anxiety with the homeowner. They've got moving trucks scheduled, they've taken off of work, and so they've got kids and family and things like that, so there's anxiety there, and you want to kind of lead them through that process towards the end in terms of getting that list. And it's always better to request the list and not be surprised by a list than to think everything is going well and all of a sudden a 3-page list comes through the fax machine. Ask that customer to go through the house. Give them a roll of blue painter's tape and tell them to just mark the house up. Again, you're setting those expectations mostly for yourself at that point. because you don't want to be going out of your mind with last-minute punch list items. So ask that customer to go through the house, ask them to give you the punch list, and again, be realistic. If you have to reference the industry standards because a customer of yours is not being realistic, well, that's your call, okay? But if it's a real hot button item and they're not going to be happy with that answer, you have to know your customer well enough to be able to communicate those things. Order any missing items and schedule trades. Fix any small items yourself if you can, instead of chasing your finished carpenter back to put one cabinet pull on. Again, those are the relationship type building things. What we do with our customers, it's pretty simple. We actually will mail them. We'll mail them our form, okay? Because we want to control the whole process. I don't want 17 forms. It was on the back of a piece of cardboard. Did you get that? No. We mail them these forms, and then that way they can leave it in the house. They can mail one back to our office, and they can have one for their records. Okay? Some of the other things that we do towards the end of a job is, again, we want to own what we are selling that customer. So if our rough carpenter scratched the glass on a window when we were building the house and we didn't notice it, we want to make sure that that's noted. Okay, so we'll note things like that on here. But after the people take occupancy of the house, we're not going to take responsibility for the hole that Uncle Frank put in the wall moving the sofa into the living room. So what we do is we'll follow up our punch list that we mail to them with a copy of this letter, and it just basically says the following items are not covered by warranty if they're not reported prior to closing. We've just set the expectation. So we're expecting you to show us or tell us anything that you are unhappy with prior to moving in. But these things won't be addressed after you move in. Broken or cracked windows, torn or damaged screens, sinks, tubs, and water closets chipped, scratched, and cracked. Vinyl floors, cuts and tears, carpet spots, stains, excluding manufacturing defects, wood floors, scratches, splinters, or gouges, doors, and all hardwood gouges or scratched, mirrors broken, cracked, scratched, just goes on and on. So all of those things that the customer, after they move into their house and they see something that their kid did 2 weeks ago and they want to blame you for scratching that cabinet, you can't. But that also sets the expectations for you that you're going to go through this house with a fine-tooth comb, okay? Because you can't ask the layperson to bring all this stuff to you. You've got to be very proactive in making sure that you've gone through every inch of millwork in that house, every screen, all the flooring, and occasionally there's going to be something missed. But then you just have to use your better judgment on things like that. But this really, really is a good tool to control that. And really what you've done is, there's customers that at closing, when they sign this, they'll sign this at closing, but they get a copy of it about a month before they close, so that we've told them, listen, this is what we're going to expect out of you. But I've had people at closing that are like, geez, do you want to take one more walk through the house? And like, I just spent 3 hours with you. We went through everything. Well, I'm not sure. So again, setting the expectation and being realistic is a good thing. Any questions on any of that stuff? Yeah.
I just have a question. Are these all your own forms that you've made up, Joe, over the years working with homeowners, or is there something on internet or a template that you based your forms on?
You can go to my website. No, I'm kidding. No. This is all stuff that I've just made up. It's over the years. And I was talking earlier over here. You know what it is? It's you get burned, or you wind up taking a hit and fixing something, or you got into a confrontation with a contractor because whatever. And so you just learn to cover your tail, over the years. And you know what it boils down to for me now is it's just a no-brainer. It's in place. Here's how we do it. This is the expectations. This is what I expect. And so it's nice because it does control the customer. And that's one of the biggest things, especially towards the end of the process, is controlling that customer. Because like I said, there's a lot of anxiety there. Any other questions? Homeowner orientation. You want to take the homeowner through, show them everything in the house and how it works. Cover all products, warranties, things like that throughout the orientation. Hang on just one second.
So you actually review the warranty for the water heater and the furnace with them per se?
Yeah. But what we do, I lost my place. What we do with our warranty, and I was not aware of this, and again, if you spend a lot of time in arbitrations with attorneys, bantering back and forth, you learn a lot for free. But you really are obligated to turn over to your customer all the product information for everything that's in the home, okay? You're obligated to do that. And that doesn't mean the drawer in the kitchen. We've all had the drawer in the kitchen where everything just gets put in there and you move in and you're going through and, oh, here's everything. Enjoy going through it. What we've done is we've put together a warranty, and it really starts with just the standard, things that we put in our homes. Whether it's Pella windows and all that sort of stuff. You can go online and get all that information. But then what we do is we reference back to the production packet, and we'll go through all the products that we put into the home. And now we have a big file of all the different stuffs that people can put in their home. And then we'll put it into the categories that are in here. So we've got just the general warranty information, and that's going to have the customer's warranty that they sign when they sign a contract with you. We also include in there punch list, our punch list, not theirs. We've got some indoor air quality information in there, explaining, about condensation in the house and what the customer should do. Some tips in there by Mr. Fix-It. And then we also give them, and I know there's builders out there that probably say, boy, you're opening yourself up to a can of worms, but we actually give them the industry standards, and we give them 2 copies. We give them a copy when they sign a contract, so that if they are out there and they want to take a look at, is that acceptable? Here it is. But we're not worried because we feel we build above the standards. And then there's also information in here, interior, all the flooring, cabinetry, hardware, countertops, shower doors, etc. And then on the exterior, we've got siding, gutters, windows, you name it, roof, brick, the mechanicals, heating, cooling. A lot of that stuff we leave right by the appliances, hot water heater and things like that. And then the other thing that's very difficult is to gather all plumbing fixture information. But if you're using the same plumber, you should be able to get all that information from whoever it is. And then we actually go through the extent of looking at the production packet, and then we put a little sticker on here, powder room faucet. So the homeowner doesn't have to thumb through it and say, well, which faucet is which. So that's how we do it, and that's the orientation that we give it. Now, again, you don't have to go to that extreme, but again, that product information, technically you should be collecting all of it and giving it to your customer. And then you've got the, again, there's any number of checklists that you can put together. I tend to not like checklists too much. It just becomes too monotonous then. And then you stop looking at things you should be looking at, and you're just going through the motions. Building schedule management. Schedule development options. Paper schedule. Obviously, the layout's going to be similar to a spreadsheet, or computerized schedule. I've worked for builders who have both been computerized and paper. And I will tell you that the guys that schedule on paper are much more accurate than the computer guys for whatever reason. I don't know. Yeah. And just for an example, this is one of my Expeditors job books. This is their complete job, start to finish, Everything's in here. Purchase orders, calendars, whatever piece of paper he touched for this job, we have it right here. Okay? So, whatever system you're going to use, make sure it's consistent. And then just insist on being organized. I mean, it makes your life that much easier. So, whether or not you're going to use the paper schedule or computerized schedule, just make sure that you do it. One of the things that we do when we generate a purchase order, and I'm kind of going to talk away from the slides. The purchase order gets generated, and then we generate a job confirmation scheduling sheet, and this actually gets faxed to the contractor, and it's their responsibility to fax it back to us. And basically, it just gives them the job address, the contractor, when we want them on the date, ordered, the date we ordered it. So if I ordered it today, it'd be the 12th of January. I want them in there on the 12th of February, start date, and then I want a finish date. And if there's any notes, okay? It's their responsibility to fax this back to us and confirm that they've got it, okay? So again, whatever your system is and however you're going to communicate with your contractors, that's the way we, just stick to something consistent. And again, we do it with a fax because, people are busy. They can do it at night if they're working out of their house. But at least we know that they got it. We know that we can put them on the schedule as to being on the date, on the job for that date, and then we can schedule because they said they're going to be off the job. And again, when it comes to a contractor, to me, the finish date is more important than the start date. And I know most homeowners, if you tell them the painter's going to be there on Monday and he doesn't show up till Wednesday, but he gets done by Friday, I don't care. It's just getting the job done on the date that you wanted it finished and completed by. Because, the farther out you send these, and it does help because on occasion, especially with a tile installer, you'll get a tile that's maybe not in stock. Okay, back when we cut the purchase order 2 months earlier, okay, it was coming in, but it was on a slow boat from China. Well, that boat from China didn't arrive yet, and I need you on the job. Gives you a heads up. So if I know that a month ahead of time, I can then tell my customer, hey, that tile's not going to be in by the time we need it. You might want to go make another selection. Or we can hold the job up for as long as you want, okay? But at least you've communicated that. And that's important information that you need to have. Not that the tile guy goes to the store to pick it up that day to his tile supplier. Oh, he calls you, we don't have it. Now everybody's rushing, customer's upset. So again, whatever your scheduling system is, have a system, okay? Here's an example of a paper schedule. And again, when I'll show you what we use. It's pretty scientific. It's right. It's a computer. It's a computer generated calendar out of Outlook. That's it.
Yeah, you fill it in manually.
Fill it in. There you go. And the interesting thing, if I took you through this, I could pull out any of my job schedule confirmations and show you dates, and they're hit right on the money. So, again, having a clean system does help. There's another example of a paper schedule. I've seen all kinds of these. And again, my brain just can't get wrapped around the computer thing. We deal with so many contractors, and they're just, people aren't as computerized in our industry as the contractors aren't. So, creating the schedule. Again, things that you have to take into consideration are the number of starts. If you're digging 6 basements in a week and you expect your wall contractor to get them all in, within the following week, that's not going to happen unless you've got a pretty big wall contractor. So you want to take a look at the number of starts you got and start to forecast out. footings and foundations inspection, backfill inspection, framing inspection, insulation inspection, then final inspection. Some of the things that, you know, are going to affect that timeline are lot conditions, time frame for completion of each construction phase, and weather. Weather, labor. I know back in the late 90s there seemed to be a run and shortage on carpenter contractors, and we'd occasionally take a job and the basement had been sitting for a couple of months, and all of a sudden, you know, we're just the carpenter contractor, and the homeowners show up and they're screaming at us, "Where have you been? Where have you been?" And we didn't create that. So again, that builder should have been a little more alert to the fact that I'm putting a basement in the ground and I don't have a carpenter contractor yet. One of the other things that we do in our office to help communicate with what's going on in the field to the office, so that either a salesperson or the payables and receivable gal can take a look at when a house is going to be ready to take a draw. We use a job ticket here. Okay, again, nothing that's that technologically advanced, just a pen and some paper here. And really it just takes you through all the critical phases. And, you know, it basically has the date that we ordered it, when it was promised, and then when it was complete. Okay? And, you know, we've come up with certain abbreviations for which contractors on the job and stuff. But this way, if my superintendent is out in the field and a salesperson wants to take somebody through a house that's in the rough mechanical phase, they can go back, look at the job tickets and say, okay, this job here is going to be final inspected on this, or rough inspection on this date. Just another way to communicate without, you know, falling over yourself and calling people on the phone. So there's just a plethora of different ways that you can keep track of what's going on the job site. It's just picking something and sticking to it. Schedule communication, again, that's a real good example of that. The daily schedule updates, you know, as you walk your projects. Maybe you have weekly production meetings so that everybody in the company knows where jobs are at. What's really nice about having an organized schedule is if you ever get into a situation where a customer says, you really dragged your heels on this, or you didn't show up when you were supposed to show up and we had that big rainstorm and that's what caused, you know, this. You know, if you have organized paperwork, if you have dates that you fax things, and it's all right there, you can always go back and say, hey, hold on a second, that's not true. These are the actual dates or whatever. And again, if you ever wind up or find yourself in arbitration or arguing, it's, you know, the documentation is critical. And those signatures of your contractors or your customers, that's critical as well. So daily schedule updates, controlling the schedule. You want to hold trades accountable. Make sure the house is ready for each trade on their scheduled date. That's really important. If you've got people that are showing up for jobs that aren't ready, it's costing them money. And eventually that's going to get factored into the bid. Okay? And you want to be on top of that. You want to stay in front of that. We've got a job going right now. It's about 3 miles off the Illinois border. And can you imagine sending the contractor from, you know, Oconomowoc down there and the job not be ready? So, you know, you really want to know what's going on in those jobs. Ironically enough, I had a contractor that went down there early, thinking that they could get into the house early, and the wood floors had just been finished. And he thought he was getting a jump on it, and but again, communicating back and forth, phone call would have saved them, you know, $40 in gas. Call trades to reschedule if the home is not ready. You know, make sure you're giving your trades a heads up. I had a builder call me once that said the job, it's all ready. The building inspector went through it. He left his punch list there. Rough inspection was done yesterday. Can you go back there and take care of it? Sure. He says, by the way, just one small little detail, if you could take care of it for me. the plumber had a hard time getting that tub module that was back ordered in the house, and he kind of took the doorway going into the house apart just a little bit. And so if you could just take care of that, put that back together, that'd be great. And when I pulled up to the job, the plumber didn't take the doorway apart just a little bit. He made a new doorway with his Sawzall, and he cut the whole wall, the sway brace, the sheeting, and everything out, and it fell right into the garage, and it laid there. And, those were I'm getting there thinking I'm going to be there for an hour taking care of some minor items, and now I'm remodeling. So those are the surprises that you don't want to have, because ironically enough, we did price factor that in on the next job for that builder, okay? So being organized in knowing how those jobs, where they're at, and what's really going on the jobs, that's a critical issue. And make sure the house is ready for a closing date. Again, this is the point where the customers have a ton of anxiety. We just had a closing yesterday where the customer was calling all through the holidays. The house will never be done. It'll never be done. And it's amazing until they see the house final cleaned and everything sparkling. For whatever reason, the day before, they were certain the house wasn't done, but everything was done. So, set that expectations with the customer and making sure that you hit that closing date and take that anxiety level down just a couple notches. Give the homeowner 30 to 45 days notice of closing. That depends on the size of the house. If you're building a 7,000 square foot house, that's, the finished carpenters are going to be in there for 2 months. I mean, just make sure you give that customer enough time, enough notice. We always seem to be able to hit it when we're in drywall. We can give the people a pretty close date at that point in time. Schedule and communicate with the trades. Again, we talked about this. How do your trades want to be communicated with? Email, fax, hand-delivered, which probably not so much. And the meetings, how are they going to meet with you? And really, how are they going to get the information from your office? That's critical. Cost control measures. Make sure the trades are completing the work per the bid and the scope of work. That'll directly impact the project's budget. Not completing work per the scope or bids can equate to extra charges and possibly higher warranty costs. That's a real good one, because the warranties really start the costs on that, typically, if you study the warranty work and what caused the problem, if you go far enough back, you can probably pinpoint it right on and say, if we would have just stopped and did this better, or if we would have stopped and just redid this and then move forward. So when you're talking quality, whenever you've got your warranty issues, always go back to really what was the root cause of it. And if it's something that's happening repeatedly, put something in your system that's going to safeguard against that happening again. Follow the schedule. Delays cost money. So, quicker turn. Ensure trades complete punch list items. I don't know, I don't have one here, but we have a pretty tight policy on how many punch list items a trade can have out there unfinished. And if it's not finished, we either stop using them, we won't put them onto another job, or we'll hold from a payment that they've got coming, just so that they know how critical that punch list work is. I mean, that's where you'll get nickeled and dimed to death. Everybody's, they're always great at 80% of it. It's that last 20% that seems to just take them their lifetime. And you as the builder control that. So make sure that they're going back and they're doing their punch list items. And if you have to go back and meet that contractor on the job after the job is closed or the customer's living there, that's what you got to do. But see that through to the end, because it'll be nothing but a headache. It'll cost you money, and it's always better to focus on moving your business forward than what you did or what you should have did right behind you. Control the extras. You're going to control them using change orders. Had an interesting conversation at the break, asked about the change order fees. And, you know, what is your change order fee and how many times, you know, do you write a change order, do you charge for a change order fee when they just change a color? Well, not really. Our company, we won't change the $150 change order fee that we have in our contract unless they really start to get out of hand with those change orders. And typically all you have to tell them is the change order that you have in your hand now is the last one. The rest of them we're going to charge you $150 per change order. Typically we use that as kind of a lever to just let's shut it off now. Okay? But you want to make sure that you're controlling the extras because it's only going to cost you time. And if you work on a purchase order system, you know, every time something gets changed, we have to change the purchase order or write a new purchase order. So we've got admin costs in there and everything. So, you know, you don't want somebody sitting in your office all day just writing change or purchase orders for change orders. So you want to control the extras. And then again, change orders. Make sure to get all change orders in writing and signed by the homeowner before the work proceeds. If you are going to do verbal change orders, make sure that you follow them up with written change orders. How many people in here just operate strictly on verbal change orders? Oh, great. No hands. Perfect. Collect the money for the changes based on your company's policy. It's really up to you. Customer and inspector relationships. Supervise the following. You've got the required inspections, certificate of occupancy, pre-drywall walkthrough, customer orientation walkthrough, completion of work through items, and then landscape. Backing up to the required inspections, and I didn't touch on this a lot, but the relationship that your superintendent has with those building inspectors can go a long way. You know, if they are a real good set of eyes as well. And not only are they a good set of eyes, but they're a real good reference too. I mean, when you've got building inspectors saying good things about you, you know, you're easy to work, they're easy to work with, their guys respond well. And not only that, but, you know, a lot of times, if you've got good relationships with the building inspector, your superintendent has a good relationship with them, many times you got that relationship where, you know, I saw this, I'm not going to require a re-inspect, I'll get it on the next inspection. But if you create that, the situation where the building inspector is not going to trust that it's going to be taken care of, it just makes the process really, really difficult. It's difficult enough building a house in this environment that we call Wisconsin. You don't need to throw those things into it either. So keep that in mind. The warranty, again, I mentioned it earlier, a lot of companies actually have a warranty person, okay, depending on how many homes you do. A lot of times it'll be the superintendent, and if you're a one-man shop, well, you're the warranty department as well. Warranty is it's very important to the customer satisfaction. Use the industry standards, the warranty as a minimum standard. Again, sometimes you have to go back to that if you've got a situation where a customer just isn't taking good enough as good and they want things done over and over again. Sometimes you can rely back on the industry standards if it's referenced in your contract and in your warranty, which if you're using the MBA contract, all of those documents interact together. So that's a great reason to use that. The other thing about warranty and being very explicit to your customer in terms of having things fixed. Now, if something's broke, absolutely fix it. It's got to be fixed. It's covered under the warranty. But many times customers don't understand that the perfect house has never been built. We try like the dickens every day we go to work to build the perfect house, but until they take us humans out of it, it's not going to happen. And what's important to explain to your customer is that perhaps the fix, whatever it is you're trying to fix, might look as unsightly as what you're trying to fix, or your eye might be drawn to it even more. You know, particularly with drywall and paint issues, you know, and again, that's something that you set the expectation for at the beginning, and again, when you're doing your walkthrough with the customer. Is that something you want fixed? The fix might be as noticeable as, you know, the blemish you're trying to fix, but set the expectation and then just follow through on what it is. But that's a real important piece. Monitor the completion of the warranty requests on homes completed. Nothing worse than just having stuff dangling out there. I mean, it's just not productive. Completed in a timely fashion. You know, inevitably, I'll see it in the arbitration here at the MBA where the customers many times will say, we were really, really happy. We love the builder. They did everything that we wanted them to do while we were building our home. But, you know, they just won't do this, or they just can't come back and finish this right. And, you know, so all of a sudden, all that good faith, word of mouth advertising that you potentially could have had from a customer is just, it's out the window now. This is a real important place that you can really resell the value that your business brings to the customer in terms of, boy, we made the right decision building with that particular builder, because it can be lost so quickly. So schedule all the trades for 1 or 2 days. If you have a large punch list, and I would encourage you, as difficult as it is when you're closing a customer and you're doing your final walkthroughs, as difficult as it may be, and again, you'd have to work with the customer. Depending on how difficult they are, move the closing date until those items are taken care of. Because there's nothing worse than when the customer's living in the house and you've got a 30-item punch list and you got people all over the house because inevitably one of your contractors is going to nick the piano, they're going to, you know, ding a table. I mean, it's difficult, but if you can move that closing date, I would encourage you to do it if you've got a real persnickety customer that is just going to want everything just right. It'll save you a ton of time and headaches down the road. But if you do have somebody that's reasonable and you've got a number of items on that list, perhaps it's the 1 year or 4 month or 6 month list, whatever it is that you use, you know, getting them all in there one day, maybe a morning, so that that customer just has to take off of work for a short period of time is probably helpful. And have the homeowner sign off when it's complete. That's extremely important. We do have job work orders that our subs are to take to the homeowner, and they actually mail them back in. And if they don't get a signature, we make them go back and get a signature. Because again, that customer is taking responsibility for the fact that they've accepted that work and we're done. We're going to move on. Okay? So that signature is critical. Evaluate the warranty request to determine future product use. And again, not only future product use, but it's nice to go back and say, boy, we have been having a problem with this consistently. Is it the trade that we use? Is it the product that we're using? Is it the process that we're using? So use the warranty history as kind of a projection into the future as to what parts of your business and what parts of the process you need to fix. All kinds of different warranty forms. Again, even if you're going to operate off of a legal pad and make a punch list for the customer, have them sign it. Real important. If you don't have a legal pad and you've got a cardboard box top, I mean, just have them sign it. Because what it does, again, it elevates the seriousness of which they have to pay attention to things. And it makes you look more professional, even if it is on a piece of cardboard. Okay, it's that accountability. Quickly talking a little bit about safety. Excuse me, your superintendents should be focusing on safety every day, should be focusing on job site neatness. You know, toolbox talks. I know our carpenters do toolbox talks weekly. We document them. You know, it's always nice maybe on a check that you send to your contractors, maybe every now and then throw a little toolbox talk in there. You can go online, you can get all kinds of them. Just let your trades, your contractors know that you're serious about safety, okay? And it's nothing that you have to be real hard-nosed about, but make them aware that you're thinking about it, because it matters. Everybody should go home from work safely every night. Just gives you some tips here. if you're going to have safety toolbox talks, or if you're going to have one big safety meeting on a job site for all your trades, have a sign-up sheet. You want documentation in case OSHA ever pinches you. So you want to have some documentation there. Bring some donuts and orange juice or some refreshments. And beer does not count as a refreshment at a safety meeting. Okay, just had to say that. Have an agenda, make it short, and stick to the agenda. These shouldn't take more than 20 minutes, half an hour. Get the people interactive too. It makes it a lot more worthwhile. Know exactly what you want to accomplish, keep it short, end the meeting on time. Have the meeting at a consistent time each week if you're going to have these meetings, and then lead by example. And again, just an idea of what the toolbox talk looks like, having people sign off on that. Safety and OSHA, back to the gentleman's question early on, all employees need OSHA training, not just union employees, all employees. And the training needs to be continuous. You should have people that are CPR certified. There's 10-hour OSHA training courses out there. Find out where those are at and notify all your subs and your contractors. If you don't, contact your local HBA. And believe it or not, OSHA, they'll talk with you. They're people just like we are. I don't give them too much information, but they will help you if you call them. Question.
So there's not a size company that kind of a line where OSHA's, if you're this small, then they leave you alone?
If I'm a one-man carpentry outfit and I'm finishing inside of a house, I need to have ear protection, I need to have eye protection, all the guards on my equipment need to work. So it does not matter. And it's unfortunate that there's a misconception of that, because there are so many residential job sites that I drive by that you just look at and shudder. And again, that safety is a cultural, it really is something that you have to bring in and be consistent about every day. And when you go to turn that culture to a more safety-oriented culture, one of the things that you have to be mindful of is the people you have on board right now might not be the people that you're going to have on board when you come out the other end. And that's a very difficult thing, for a lot of people, because, that guy's been doing my work for 20 years. But if he doesn't want to change, that's it. We have a Finnish carpenter that I went into a job site one day, and all of his guys, they were ripping things without the guards. Nobody had safety glasses on. So I went out, I bought a whole box of safety glasses, I bought a bunch of ear protection, and I came back in and I said, this is just the warning, and there won't be a second one. And I can go on any job site we have going right now, and every one of them has eye protection, they have hearing protection, and all their guards are operable and working. So, it doesn't take a lot, and you don't have to be real hard-nosed about it, but it's certainly, the biggest thing I tell everybody, the reason you want to work safely every day is so you can go home to your family every night. That's the only reason we have safety programs. Question?
What are the ideas, some of the fines that you could be subject to? Is there like a first-time offender, second time, third time?
Yep. The question was, what are some of the fines in terms of severity? And there is. When we got our OSHA fine, I had carpenters on the job, and we actually got a housekeeping violation, and they piled on my roofers violations as well. That was what's known as a multi-employer citation. We had, going into our negotiations with OSHA, we had about $5,000 in fines for the unprotected roofer on top, and then there was a roofer on the ground, and there was no controlled access zone marked off. And then we got one for a housekeeping issue. We were actually done punching the second floor out of this house, and we had the front window left out. Everything else was done. Guardrails were up. The house was really very nice, and my guys were throwing the material out of the front window because it was a side entrance garage. Dumpster was in the driveway, and they were throwing it out there, and then they were all just going to kind of grab it and take it to the dumpster. Well, the OSHA compliance officer said the correct thing to do would have been to move the dumpster over to the window. That's what we got pegged for. We wound up walking out of there with a $1,000 fine, and more importantly, the grade or the rating, how they there's severe, and then there's less than severe. So it kind of goes down, because that's the important thing, because if you'd ever get fined again, they look at that, and then that dictates on, if it's willful, that'll dictate on the fine. There's another question?
In more recent years, the OSHA has become more consultant-oriented, and they're more apt to offer you consulting now than trying to come down on you.
Well,
Yeah.
well,
They have to fund their operation.
I'm not, I'll tell you what, there's a bunch of safety organizations out there that I would call first to consult on what our safety program is before I'd call the man and say, hey, come on over. They do have a program right now where they, it's kind of like, I got amnesty, come on out and tell me what to fix. That's a little too close for me, though. Any other questions? That's an interesting group of people to sit down with, though. I actually sat down with a couple of them to put together another presentation that I give, and the statistics are staggering. I mean, they are really staggering when you take a look at workplace injuries and, the cost of an accident, and it's really unbelievable. And I know sometimes when we're in smaller companies, we just don't see it that way, but it's staggering.
What can help a general contractor and also sub at a job site is to have a safety procedural manual.
Absolutely, but a manual is only as good as the people that are administering it. Yeah. Safety inspection sheet, like I said, my guys have just some 3-piece things in their truck. If they see something that somebody shouldn't be doing, just take a, jot it down, have them sign it, put it in the contractor's file. Fines and insurance. 57% of the federal OSHA inspections in 2004 were construction related. We were in that statistic. So we did our part to contribute, unfortunately. 85 million total federal OSHA fines were handed out in 2004. 4,700 or 47% of state OSHA inspections in 2004 were construction related. And fines will raise your insurance rates. And again, that's all public record too. You can go look up contractors and find that out as well. Safety and focus, tool safety, excavation and trenching, masonry work, stairways, floor and wall openings, aerial lifts, forklifts, residential roof requirements, scaffolding, ladders, fall protection, electrical hazards, PPE, finished flooring. Some of the biggest things are hard hats and safety glasses, just putting guardrails over openings. I've been in subdivisions where the job site across the street's getting hit by OSHA, and they're pulling up and visiting them. They left us alone. And the difference was our guys had hard hats, safety glasses on, our guardrails were up, the job site was relatively neat. And of course, when they come on the job site, you don't have to pack up and leave. You can just stay on the ground. Don't go on a ladder. No.
So when you bring your guys on board, do you ask them if they have a safety policy in process or in effect with their jobs, and if not, obviously they're gonna do what you ask them to do? Is that how you handle it?
We really focus on that work comp mod, and then we do a OSHA, have you had any OSHA violations and stuff like that. I like working with contractors that have mandatory drug screening when they hire. I don't care, ongoing, but when you hire, if you've got a policy that way.
What mod rate do you look for?
What mod rate? I like 1. 1 is okay, sure. I mean, that's the average, so that's what I'll give them. Safety in Wisconsin, the state processes more than 70,000 workers' compensation cases annually. 9.8 was the case rate in 2004. for construction. Nationally, it was 6.4, so you can see the disparity there. Safety is good business. The most valuable resource we all have are people. Like I said before, people are a major part of the equation of getting homes built, so let's keep them safe. Cost controls, safety and health excellence correlates with business excellence and quality. All right. Well, thank you for your time. I will be around to take individual questions too when we're done.